Commissioners, good morning public. I'd like to welcome everybody to the March 22nd, 2018 Cumberland County Commissioners Workshop Meeting. I'd like to invite everybody to please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. And at this time, I'd like to ask, are there any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move over to our first agenda item. This is a press release. We have Anita Brewster, and this is on the 17th annual swearing in Light of Hope ceremony. Anita, welcome.
Yes, thank you. This is for the court-appointed special advocates. And we are, I think, 17 years into this program and are very happy to say we're getting 7 new volunteers to bring into the system. They have been trained. They are just about done with training if we don't have a snow dump between now and next Monday. And then we have the honor of being able to have them sworn in by the judges and get them into the field to advocate for these neglected kids. So that's our press release.
That'll be going out today.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
Or was it for the second, I think it's the 2nd of April.
I'll have to look.
Yeah, yeah.
Rachel's in now.
It's got dated March 22nd today.
Maybe it's today.
We
Whatever.
rely on Rachel for.
Whatever your preference is.
Yeah.
All right, so are there any questions from the commissioners? So there's concurrence, so excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
yeah.
much. Thank you. Happy spring.
Happy spring. Thank you for that. The next agenda item, this is an action item. I'd like to call on Keith Brennan to discuss the ordinance regarding weight restrictions on Sample Bridge Road. Keith?
This is an ordinance that you authorized to be advertised at a previous public meeting. It has been advertised for enactment today. And imposes weight limitations on 2 bridges in the county.
Keith, I'm assuming the township's affected with this.
I'd have to defer to Clerk Stoner.
Yeah, Vince, the townships have been notified. Yeah, I'm not right today. Townships have been notified. We're working with Silver Spring Township. They have a few vehicles that are close to exceeding the weight. We're evaluating if we could do a special use permit for those vehicles.
Thank you. Okay, so we need a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion for approval of ordinance 2018-1.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. We now move to the next agenda item, and this is an action item as well. We have Dana Best, and this is regarding a contract or approval of agreement with Premier Healthcare Resources. Ms. Best, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. So this is an addendum to the Premier Healthcare. They currently are providing nurse support, and this is for nursing home administrator support at $47.20 a week, and action is required.
Dana, there's an increase of 17,000.
Correct, because this part of the contract is non-existing, it's brand new.
Oh, okay.
And this contract's up for renegotiation, so we'll be working on that soon.
One question in that. In prison board discussions, we've discussed the fact that Premier's had to absorb some costs that because of the high incidence rate at the prison of medical problems, explosion issues. Are they, I assume that we're probably going to at some point be asked to increase the overall rate for that. Are they documenting exactly what the...
Are you talking about the prison? It's 2 separate contracts. This is a different contract.
This deals with CNR.
What's Premier? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, my mistake. Must be a
It's
snow
okay.
day.
It's the snow day. It's the snow day.
All the blood was getting shoveling today, so it's not up here, sorry.
It is called Premier Medical.
Prime care.
Prime care.
Prime
Prime
care.
We're close.
Those P words just make you want to after a snow day.
Sorry.
There's a B and there's a K.
Very easy to confuse.
Yeah.
Apparently so.
I do it a lot.
Nice.
Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
And I'll second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Best, and thank you, Commissioners. Now I'd like to call on Sandy Moyle to walk us through some contracts and grants. Ms. Moyle?
Thank you, Steve. Agenda item 6, Roman numeral 1A, our existing contracts, extensions, or addenda with no additional cost or increase to the county. They include the following department: Children and Youth Agreements. One for Affinity Forensic Science Services LLC, doing business as Pennsylvania Forensic Associates, and PA Child Corporation. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding any of the above-mentioned agreements? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6, Roman numeral 2, which consists of new contracts, vendors, services, grants, and contracts with increases and decreases to the county. And I'll begin by calling on Jamie to discuss the 3 agreements for children and youth.
Actually, Lisa.
Oh, Lisa.
Yeah, Jamie Polasek today.
Oh,
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here to ask for approval for 3 contracts for fiscal year 17-18. The first one is Cornell Braxis. They are not asking for any increases in all their programs. However, we're adding a new service for transitional living. This is for both dependent and delinquent males who are ages 16 to 19, focusing on their education, employment, so they can transition when they age out of the system. The second one is Affinity Forensic Services. I was a little confused when I first saw that name because I saw forensics, but actually it's a new contract that we would like to contract with. It's actually Safeguards Specialized Foster Care. This is for more of our difficult children who are intellectually disabled, who may be diagnosed with autism or behaviorally challenged. So it's for more of our difficult children that we have trouble finding in regular foster care. And then the last one is Diacon, and this is just to add the Bridge GPS service. This is for our delinquent kids. It's actually to help put the monitoring on these in lieu of putting them in detention, so it's a more economical way to handle delinquent kids.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa. Next, I'd like to call on Holly Sherman to discuss CNRC insurance.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is one contract with American Insurance Administrators. They're our broker for the property and liability insurance at the nursing home. This is the annual renewal to be effective April 1st of this year for a full year. The 3 lines of coverage are the property with a slight increase of about $2,112 on that line, the liability of $2,337, and both of those are with Hanover Insurance Group. And then the last line is the cyber liability, and that's with Beasley, and that is a flat increase, or no increase for that.
Any questions for Holly?
Holly, when was the last time this was shot?
It was shopped last year for the renewal for 2007.
Thanks.
Thank you, Holly. Next, I'd like to call on Rebecca Franklin, who's here to discuss the 2 grants for the IPP program. Rebecca?
Good morning. The first grant is a 2-year grant for intermediate punishment programs. We're going on over 20 years, I think, with this grant. It's no match state funded. Each year is $337,500. It pays for 100% of 2 probation officers, 25% of a third, 50% of 2 restorative sanctions assistant, about $15,000 worth of drug testing, and the remainder all goes to inpatient and outpatient treatment and drug and alcohol case management services. The intermediate punishment plan that gets attached to this grant will be reviewed and approved on Monday the 26th at the prison board meeting.
How many years did you say we've been getting this?
About 20 years, I think.
Okay. So is this,
Well, 1997, I think we got our first grant, so no longer than that.
So this is a perpetual renewing?
It seems to be, I would say at this point, I have every confidence the state keeps renewing.
Yeah.
And the amounts went up in the last year of what they're awarding, so. And I would say this year, we didn't reach our numbers because there was a Supreme Court case that made a lot of the DUI cases we take hard to prosecute, and they had to reduce charges. But by the end of this year, we were up to 171. So I think we're going to hit probably the 250 mark for 2018.
Rebecca, the grant amount is for how many years?
2 years.
2 years?
It used to be year to year, and now they've gone to a 2-year schedule.
Okay. All right, and so that's the total amount, $675,000, and there's no match. You mentioned that this covers some of the salaries of
Two probation officers, 100%, salary and benefits.
and then part of another
The third,
probation officer.
25%.
Okay, does that mean then, relative to the work of those probation officers, they're focused exclusively, those two in particular, on intermediate punishment?
They are, yes.
And then how is the work of the other probation officers?
They're also all 100% in effect, but the grant limits us in how much we can spend on supervision and treatment, and that's the way it fell out, so.
Okay.
And the second grant is the JAG federal funded grant through PCCD. We are wishing to apply for $150,000, which is the max that you can apply in the first year. The concept behind this, one of the objectives is to address mental health and co-occurring disorders in the criminal justice system. We have in the jail, from data we did in 2013 in preparation for our cost mapping experience, we had 209 people admitted with SMI. About 94 of those were also at least identified as having a substance abuse disorder. Of those 94, only 25% received a drug and alcohol treatment plan, and they did not receive a mental health plan. And all the research shows that if you have a co-occurring disorder, those should be treated simultaneously. So what we'd like to do is put out an RFP to our perform care providers in the community so that we can actually have full psychosocial evaluations done in the jail, which is something we can't have happen now. That way we can see a person's full treatment needs and make sure that at the same time they're getting drug and alcohol and mental health services. And we'd also like to add a DBT component, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy that addresses trauma and another difficult diagnosis for I treatment for is borderline personality. What we would be able to do is use the grant funds in the jail, and then most of these people would be eligible for perform care, so in the community they could transition and their treatment plan would not be interrupted.
Okay, I should know this, but I don't. So how does any of this overlap with your shows?
Rebecca and I, this really came from a lot of it sprang from Tom's court, the mental health court.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has been an ongoing challenge is the fact that we might get individuals' records, but they're not comprehensive or complete records, so we have gaps of information. And so since we've been involved with that court, we've talked about the need to have a person, an individual, be able to come in and do an assessment, psychosocial assessment along with diagnoses, because a lot of the folks have very inaccurate diagnoses, which is what we're finding as we're going through the whole process. And in order
Where do those come from?
Well, some are self-report from the data that we collect, and others you will find a person who is admitted to the jail repeatedly may get a different diagnosis each time they're there. So you're left with choosing which of these is correct. And
right. So if we, because the prime care in the jail doesn't do comprehensive assessments,
Sure.
They do screenings. And so consequently, if we're looking for comprehensive assessments in order to develop and support individuals in treatment, we don't have that. So it's very difficult to come up with some most effective treatment kinds of plans for individuals. So if we start this process at the prison, then we'll be more effective at knowing what is an appropriate diagnosis and the appropriate path to follow for treatment. And even more critical is the fact that then when folks have started their treatment in prison and are transferring to the community, they will have the ability to have continuity of that service or care instead of having to shift providers. So, yeah, we've talked about this a lot, and I think it would be a real benefit if we could tighten all that up, both from the prison perspective as well as the community perspective.
Okay, thank you.
And so if we're successful in our efforts, we have the opportunity to go in for 70% in a second year of funding. Currently, we have not maximized the Roxbury treatment contract at the jail, and we have discussed previously potentially using those funds for the DBT. This will allow us to sort of extend out, not utilizing those funds, but that is an option for us when the grant would go away to utilize unused funding there and maybe mental health based services.
What kind of size of allocation are we looking at with that, roughly?
That would be about 20% of the overall funding, which would be the DBT services.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I do have one more. I mean, none of this addresses the issue where we've had difficulty finding longer-term mental health treatment, forensic beds, around the state, right?
No, it's just not. I mean, that's an overwhelming problem for us.
And that's, that's a state issue. I mean, we can certainly do the referrals, we can certainly work to bring folks back to the community. I mean, one of the things that we do with our prison is that if somebody is significantly psychiatrically ill and is appropriate for inpatient psychiatric hospitalization, our mobile crisis goes out and does an assessment, works with the prison, works with the criminal justice system then, depending upon charges. If somebody has a real serious charge, of course, this is not an option, about getting them placed then into a psychiatric community inpatient unit bed and then discharged from there. But for folks who have committed more serious crimes, that, of course, is not an option.
But one of the, and I think one of the problems we're aware of, prison and prison board is the fact that, we have some inmates that really need to be like at Torrance or one of the other institutions.
Well, one of the things we set up through Tom's Court is that the prison will automatically refer to us any person who goes to Torrance so that we can, when they get back, have them ready to transition to Tom's Court so that they don't decompensate in the jail upon regular.
But I know that this came up just the other day at the CCAP conference again, and we were, discussing, the statewide need. I mean, the state many years ago now moved to this deinstitutionalization, and we have situations where we have folks who need this long-term treatment, and the beds aren't available. So, and really the resources back to the community haven't been sufficient. So, anyway, it's still a challenge, but I appreciate what you're doing here with this.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next, I'd like to call on Carrie Gravin, who's here to discuss the PCCD grant for the District Attorney and Bureau of Justice Services.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's a grant before you, the no-match grant to PCCD for $139,376. It would provide for an instrument called a vacuum metal deposition chamber, and this is used as an advanced technique to develop and preserve and collect latent fingerprints off of items in crime.
Commissioners, this is an action requested by you today.
This is for the acquisition of that?
Yes.
That device, instrument, rather. Okay. All right. I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. John Locke will be discussing the three agreements with Siemens. Thomas?
Good morning, Commissioners. There's 3 Siemens agreements here. The first one's an MAC upgrade. It was previously approved as a capital project. There's been a contract drawn up. vendor, asking for approval to move forward with that MEC upgrade. The second one is a Siemens wiring and programming, and that is for the rooftop units at the Dennis Marion building. And this is the Siemens portion of the contract in the amount of $8,750, and that's previously approved as a capital project. It's signed by the vendor, asking for approval of that contract. And then the third one is a COSARS agreement, which is a 5-year agreement. Instead of doing yearly inspections, went out and got quotes and proposals from 4 separate vendors, and Siemens came in as the low bid, and this is for fire alarm testing and sprinkler inspection. The annual cost is $34,952. The 5-year cost is $174,760, and the estimated savings is about $20,000 by awarding a 5-year instead of a yearly contract, and the price is locked in.
Any questions for John?
John, on the wiring and programming of the AC units, this is being done by an outfit that we didn't purchase them from? Is that what you're saying?
This was a HP McClure, was approved the other week. This is the third time we talked about the MEC upgrades, but MEC is proprietary. The MEC upgrades, or the wiring and the programming is proprietary along with the MEC upgrades. So HP McClure couldn't do that. So this is the Siemens portion of that. In order to install those rooftop units, this is the computerized portion, which is connected to our energy management computer system. And they're the only ones really that can do that programming because of the proprietary system we're in countywide.
Thanks.
Next, I'll call on Kirk Stoner to discuss the low wire agreement regarding Morris Bridge repair. Kirk?
Thanks, Sandy. Commissioners, this is a small repair at Morris Bridge with low wire that was our low bidder on $16,549. We have to make this repair, otherwise we had to drop the weight posting to a level that would have had some severe impacts on emergency equipment as well as township maintenance equipment. If you recall, we are replacing Morris Bridge. We need to have the existing bridge in place the whole way through construction of the new bridge. We're doing a new bridge off the line. So this repair, albeit small, gets us through construction.
You're still on track for construction next year?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Thanks, Kirk.
That's Monday. That's voted on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to, I have to abstain on that because it's family. So just want to make note of that.
Okay, next we'll move on to Sylvia Herman, who will be discussing the agreement with PA Counseling Services. Sylvia?
Hi. This is a contract where mental health pays half and Cumberland County Prison pays half. It's been a long-standing contract with another provider. That provider recently unexpectedly passed away. And so I worked with Mike Carey at the prison. We use PA counseling for that same service in Perry County Prison. And so we're now going to switch Cumberland County Prison to PA counseling as well. It does evaluation and treatment for a specialized population in our prison. And is the cost for that service are split 50-50, 50% mental health based funds and 50% from Cumberland County Prison.
Any questions for Sylvia? Thank you, Sylvia. Next, I'll call on Claudia Gardner, who's joining us via video teleconferencing to discuss the Kane Automotive Agreement. Claudia?
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is a 5-year lease agreement with Kane Automotive. That is for storage for our hazmat vehicle and equipment down in Lemoyne on Herman Avenue. It is a 5-year agreement, and it's $18,000 per year, which is an increase of $3,000 annually compared to the previous 5-year agreement. We do have the option to discontinue this lease with a 6-month written notice if there if some other opportunity that would come up otherwise. We did have John Love review the contract, and it's, like I said, $18,000 per year for 5 years. Any questions?
Claudia, why does it cost so much to, what's it, just being housed somewhere?
I'm sorry?
I don't understand what the contract is for, this hazmat rent for vehicle.
That is where one of the hazmat vehicles is stored.
Okay.
We don't have enough storage for the vehicles here at Public Safety, and that is one that is, it's always been located in Lemoyne for many years. It's centrally located to many of the responders for the hazmat team. So it enables a quicker response time for the West Shore as well.
It seems like a lot of money to house a vehicle, but
We are exploring alternatives as a group. We sat down and talked with John Love and a few other departments actually about potentially constructing a standalone storage facility, a garage basically. But that's something we'll have to bring to you at the next budget season. We're nowhere near a concept to present at this point, but we are checking out alternatives, and John has said that that's a good price per square foot compared to what other options would be at this point.
Claudia, I know you brought this up at the last public safety review team, but this topic, did you, in your discussion with John Lott, did you arrive at any even preliminary dollar figures that you'd be able to provide to us, or you'd be able to provide to us for the new facility?
Yeah, not at this point. We've talked about just having a facility that would be just for the hazmat vehicles.
Right, yeah.
And of course, this is allocated for the hazmat funding. But then we also identified a few other departments, particularly like the sheriff's office, who has a need for some additional type of facilities. So we're trying to see if maybe it could be a multi-department function that we could actually tap into some other funding as well to minimize the impact of the general fund. But, you know, it goes from a very small facility to something much larger, and that dollar amount I just don't have for you at this time.
Okay, we have a number of capital improvement needs that commissioners need to be considering here in the near term. So we may be coming back to you with a request for some more ballpark numbers, but that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, Claudia, I'll just follow up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We're just still in the discussion phase of identifying the needs and the functions of what the facility may or may not consist of. So once we get that identified, then we can reach out and actually get some solid estimates from some. Good.
Okay, my only thing, and I think we did discuss this briefly at the last public safety review team meeting, but one of the things I think we ought to also do, if we haven't done it, is survey our local emergency first responders to find out whether there's any facilities that might be able to house this, and where we could, essentially pay them the rent as opposed to having our own facility. I assume that hazmat response is still primarily by volunteers, and so a lot of these folks who are responding from our hazmat team are probably connected with their local volunteer fire company as well. So I just think that may be a practical solution that we ought to explore to see whether or not there's any facilities that have been built that might be able to handle, essentially the storage of this unit. So I just think that's something we ought to look at.
Absolutely, that's one of the things on our list as well. Are you sure you weren't sitting in on that meeting?
Well, the red light on the camera isn't always good.
Yeah, but Claudia, I'm glad you're reading my mind, so that's good.
We try to think of it before you can get
There you go.
answers for you.
Anticipate.
Any other questions?
I just add one thing. If we go that route and we want to explore existing properties that maybe the first responder community has, we may want to include municipalities in that, because some of them
Yes,
would have perhaps surplus garage space as well.
that's a good point.
Start with the first responder.
Absolutely. We could bring it up at an MAB meeting perhaps.
That's a good point, yep, good idea.
Okay, thank you, Claudia.
Have a good day.
You too. Next, I'd like to call on Justin Miller, who is also joining us via video teleconferencing to discuss the municipal recycling grant application. Justin?
Morning, Commissioners. So after a 2-year hiatus with recycling grants, that was due to the state's $2 per ton tipping fee was set to expire in 2020. The legislator did extend the state's tipping fee at the end of last year indefinitely, and DEP subsequently put out a grant application round for recycling grants. We immediately thought it'd be wise to apply for funding to buy a new grinder that supports our yard waste recycling equipment program that municipalities participate in. A new grinder, these things are getting expensive. A new grinder today is going for about $650,000. The grant maximum is $350,000, but since 2015, the municipalities have been paying into a capital fund, and at the end of the year, we had about $210,000 in there. By the time we would go to buy a machine, assuming we got the grant, we would have enough money plus the grant plus the trade value to cover all the costs. So the steering committee and the authority have both looked at this and have recommended that we apply for this grant to buy a new grinder and replace our oldest one, which is about 10 years old. Grant is due on April 7th, and we can always go back in another grant round and try to get that additional difference, which would put our capital funds back into our pot. So I think financially we're in a good position. So I'm asking for your approval and signature on the application. We also, if you approve applying, I need to run a public notice in the newspaper just saying that we're applying for grant funding from the state.
Are there any questions for Justin?
So let me ask one thing. I should know this again, but the municipal fees, are they compulsory for the participants, or is that just a voluntary thing? And are they all paying that?
No,
What's that?
Yeah, it's mandatory.
Okay.
Mandatory. They pay a capital depreciation rate for every hour they put on a piece of equipment.
So the fee is geared toward their usage of the equipment itself.
That's correct, and we accumulated in a restricted account that can only be used to buy new equipment.
Okay, all right. So we've got a reliable revenue stream there, so, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
By the way, what did you do? We've got you full screen. Nobody else was full screen that I remember. Okay, I didn't know you did. I've always said you were larger than life.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Sandy. I'd like to turn to Dana Best and a discussion item on a bid opening for CNRC and oxygen supplies and respiratory therapy services. Dana?
Thank you. I'd like to take a minute. This is Melissa Smith. She's our new finance director at the nursing home.
Oh, that's
Thank you. So there were no bids submitted on the oxygen services. Columbia Ancillary Services submitted some of the documents, but they did not submit a bid on the form, and they did not provide the bid security, so they will need to be rebid. Because a rejection has to happen too, or is it just?
Since there are no bids, there's no need to reject.
So no action is needed at all?
No action is needed except to authorize a rebid.
Okay.
Do we need that now?
You don't need it now, but that's up to Dana.
Okay, thank you, Dana. Next we go to Commissioner's Liaison Reports. Commissioner DiFilippo. Please let me know when you want me to cover the library board.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. We'll do that. mine here are pretty quick. First one is the Western Council of Governments. Most of the activity is maintenance, townships, various townships. Mount Holly Borough, though, they received some grant money to do some curbing and cutouts within the borough. In Penn Township, they updated their ordinance pertaining to their township planning commission to accept 2 voting alternates, which I think is a pretty good idea. The township appointed 1 individual to its zoning hearing board and 1 individual to its planning commission. And for new business, the Western COG did pass a resolution supporting voter redistricting. And that is it for Western COG. The local emergency planning committee met last week. Just some items to report. This meeting only went about 25 minutes. Since the beginning of the year, there's been 13 hazmat events that required about 80 hours of man time. The Bexar County is having their summit April 24th. Cumberland County will be having their summit October 23rd at the Army Heritage Education Center. And there's still a vacancy on the committee for a community group rep. So if anyone has any names, please feel free to forward to Connie Heckert. And this is not a liaison. I did attend the spring conference dinner of the Cumberland County Farm Bureau. I'd like to report that Ken Strock is now the president. And a good part of the conference was a discussion on the McCormick Farm, what they plan to do regarding any letter of support to Cumberland Valley. A formal decision will be made at the April board meeting. And for the library, I was at the CCAP conference, and I asked Steve to provide some comments from the library board meeting on this past Monday. So Steve, you're on.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, so actually Sandy and I attended. I'm happy to report that that was my second meeting. Of particular note, I'd like to go over that we have an existing MOU with them that speaks to a futures task group. It has us appointing 9 or naming 9, them naming 9. We reconcile the 18. The board there was favorable to looking at streamlining the MOU, so we have some draft language. Also, too, the executive director was given some administrative leeway to work with us and with the solicitor's office to design that such that they name 9 and then we approve that 9. I put forward that we, the county might want upwards of 2. I'm sure they'd be okay with 3 seats, in which I'll talk to the commissioners as a group and individually later as to whether staff or the commissioners, 1 or 2, would like to participate on that. Also, we discussed their strategic plan. It looks like they're going to put forward retesting and maybe moving forward their current strategic plan for 2018 and 2019, giving them an opportunity to step back, possibly hire a consultant, and roll out a more formal process for a 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. And last, I solicited Dana Best's wordsmithing and expertise on the conditional grants. We also obtained some approval and administrative leeway to incorporate Dana's edits into the conditional grants that we work with the library board to give them some additional monies and have them work on some initiatives that we concur with. So those are all pending. I'm going to be working with Dana and with Carolyn on moving that forward. So I think those are the highlights of the meeting, as well as we went over some other things. The library system is running well. Okay, any questions? All right.
I do have Steve, the MOU you said relative to the future task, was that part of the original MOU, or has that been an amendment to the original MOU?
The original MOU, as I understand it, has us naming 9, they name 9, and we reconcile these 18 folks into 9 members.
Okay. Was that part of the funding agreement, or was that part of that?
I think it was all tied to the conditional grants.
Okay. I just didn't recall that, but if it's there, it's fine.
Okay. So hopefully this will move forward in a more streamlined fashion. So thank you, commissioners. With that, I'll ask Commissioner Hertzler to update on committee liaison reports.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. First of all, I'm going to skip around here a little bit. I see Tim Whalen, the Executive Director of the Housing Redevelopment Authority Boards, is with us today. The Housing Redevelopment Authority Boards met Thursday, March 18, and they voted to recommend to us the appointment of Jenny Mallory of Newville to fill the vacancy on the Redevelopment Authority's board created by the resignation of Tim Ebersol. Tim, as I understand, because of other matters with relation to his work, actually resigned at the beginning of his 5-year term. So we have a pretty long vacancy to fill here. But Jenny's been recommended by the Housing Redevelopment Authority Board. She's a retired realtor of 16 years, is active with the Cumberland County Historical Society, where I understand she serves currently as vice president, and also serves on the board of Cumberland County Senior Housing Associates, which is a developer, a co-developer of 7 senior housing projects in our county. So on Monday, I would like to be in a position to recommend Jenny's appointment. And if anybody has any questions, or Tim, if you want to add anything to what I said. Okay, well, let me move on then. The board approved its 2018 annual plan as required by HUD, which keeps the authority in compliance with all federal rules and regulations, and changes include housing preferences for veterans and for housing assistance to the victims of natural disasters and national disasters. The Housing Choice Voucher Program is still accepting applications, and you're working on the wait list and to sign folks up as long as federal funding remains available. The Agricultural Land Preservation Board met last Wednesday, and as I believe my colleagues are aware, voted unanimously to send their own letter to the Cumberland Valley School Board, raising their concerns and objections to the eminent domain taking of the preserved McCormick Farm in Silver Spring Township. As for an update on our county's preservation program, all the farms of the 2016 program have now settled, and surveys are underway on the 2017 farms, with settlements expected on those 2017 farms before the end of this year, which will add 858 acres to our program's farm acreage preserved, for a total of 19 acres preserved in perpetuity since the start of the county's program in 1989. Another Agricultural Land Preservation Board action, they approved an amendment to the bylaws that will now go to the state board for approval, and which will enable the addition of advisory board members to facilitate the appointment of a representative from the Cumberland Area Economic Development Corporation in an advisory capacity, with the intention of appointing Shireen Farr, who's the COO of CADIC, as that representative. And the board also established farm ranking and program guideline committees, with the ranking committee set to meet, I guess, next week, April 4, and the program guidelines committee meeting in May to consider any potential changes in the guidelines for the future. There was also considerable discussion regarding the current difficult situation facing dairy farmers who are in hard times as processors are ending contracts primarily with smaller family dairy milk producers, largely the result of the current oversupply of milk in the market. The county's Aging Advisory Board met last Friday, not an awful lot to report. The board did recommend our appointment of Raza, I'm going to have a tough time with her last name, Brzezinski. I should know that, but she's from Newville as well, to fill a vacancy on the board. Raza is the retired director of the Big Spring Senior Center in Newville after 25 years, where she still serves as an assistant, and she's also a member of Newville's Fountain Festival Committee, among other community activities. The next meeting of the Aging Advisory Board will be across the street at the Comfort Suites on April the 20th, and will include the annual luncheon recognition of volunteers in the prize and other senior service programs. My colleagues and I are all invited to join the fun. And as liaison, Senator Guerrieri has asked me to say a few words. As my colleagues full well know, that's a dangerous thing. Anyway, I hope you guys might be able to join us for lunch on the 20th with our seniors. I attended the first 2 days of the conference of the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. It was held across the river at the Hilton in Harrisburg, starting with a meeting of the Assessment and Taxation Committee this past Sunday afternoon. We talked about a series of legislative proposals, as well as the uncertain fate of our CCAP initiative and others with respect to the ongoing and elusive struggle for property tax reform. Former Lancaster County Commissioner, now State Senator Scott Martin, highlighted a proposal he's preparing for introduction that would grant counties the option of appointing county treasurers for the collection of county real estate taxes and giving municipalities the same option. School districts under the proposal would be able to collect their own real estate taxes. So while I appreciate the idea of this being a local option, this, like other proposals of the past, is undoubtedly headed for significant opposition by our elected tax collectors across the state of Pennsylvania. In addition, there's a bill being advanced by the Local Government Commission on the subject of standardization of assessment practices that includes a provision that would mandate training for all boards of assessment appeals. The mandate runs counter to the recommendation of CCAP and our committee that called for such training to be offered, made available, with a strong recommendation that boards of assessment appeals should have training and knowledge, but without the mandate. Of concern in this matter is that in many counties, boards of commissioners still serves the boards of assessment appeals, and that while specific training in this area would be undoubtedly beneficial, the mandate begins to cross into that area where the legislators are establishing certain qualifications for elected county commissioners that don't exist for other elected offices, including the state legislature. During CCAP's opening session on Monday that Vince and I both attended, we heard from Jonathan Marks, the State Commissioner of Elections, on the subject of election security and the state's new requirement that all new elections machines purchased after February 9 of this year contain a paper trail in the form of a voter verifiable paper ballot. The question regarding funding for new elections equipment across the state, however, remains murky, with, according to Marks, no guarantee on funding. There was, in his remarks, however, a glimmer of hope that both the state and federal governments may step up to the plate and hopefully pay his quote, a fair share, whatever that means. And I attended a breakout session on vehicle automation in Pennsylvania, a presentation that was led by Roger Cohen of PennDOT, who co-chairs Pennsylvania's Autonomous Vehicles Policy Task Force, and Sherry Shapiro, who heads up Uber's public and government affairs efforts in Pennsylvania and Delaware. The fact is that Pennsylvania is playing a significant role in the subject of the future of vehicle automation, with the hub for this advancing technology being shared between Silicon Valley in California and Pittsburgh here in Pennsylvania. A couple of notes that I took away: vehicle automation is being looked at in a prism of both advancing safety on our highways and potentially as a way to reduce congestion. We shall see, but there appears to be an aggressive effort to go from the partial automation of what we now see in some vehicles to what's called conditional automation to full automation, with deployment by the car manufacturers over the course of the next 2 decades. Anyway, while there will undoubtedly be setbacks along the way, it's certainly an interesting time to be alive, especially for our younger generation, as this technology advances. And from CCAP, Vince and I attended the update of our county's efforts throughout Pennsylvania to preserve and protect our environment via the actions of our 66 conservation districts. Our own Carl Goshorn gave a presentation on our work and accomplishments here in Cumberland County, and while we teased him a bit, it was clear that Carl has earned the respect of his peers for his knowledge and expertise in the field. And finally, I attended the Capital Region Council of Governments meeting on Monday night. There was a presentation from a gentleman from Bicycle South Central Pennsylvania, advocating for more bicycle-friendly communities throughout the Capital Region. And also there was a presentation from the Dauphin County representative of Fair Districts PA, the grassroots group that's promoting action by the General Assembly on first session approval of the constitutional amendment that's needed to remove the politicians and political parties from the decennial redistricting process via the appointment of an independent, nonpartisan citizens commission. That's my report.
Thank
Do we
you.
have any questions?
Any questions? Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to call on Commissioner Eichelberger.
Okay, just briefly, that's okay, Tim, I'm used to people walking out with my
More things yet ahead. Thank you.
Thanks. Just real quickly, of course, nobody mentioned, I think, the State of the County breakfast that was held week before last, and I don't need to mention that for the benefit of my colleagues, they were all there, but for others who may be interested, Carlisle and Richfield Chambers co-sponsored the State of the County event, and we get a great attendance. I'm glad to see those chambers are co-sponsoring that now. I thought it was worthwhile to note that it seemed like the most discussed topic was the opioid crisis. And I did notice there was some media attention in the Senate. I didn't really get a chance to read it, but assume there's nothing that needed corrected or updated there. So, but good event, really gave us an opportunity to discuss some of these issues in detail with members of the public and all members of the public. So nice opportunity, nicely done by all members of the board, by the way. So the let's see, Justin Smith Miller talked to us about the redevelopment, or I'm sorry, the recycling and the recycling authority meeting the other night. I was there. The discussion did center around mostly the grinder, and which he has discussed, so I don't need to recycle that there. I just mentioned in passing, he did give you some numbers in regards to the recycling center, which I thought you'd be interested in. But also, one of the things I just want to put on your radar is that we had a request from the city of Harrisburg about joining the municipal program as well. And the board had determined several months ago that wasn't really feasible because of size and a number of other factors. But that request has been resubmitted, and we may end up hearing from the mayor on that. So if any of you get a phone call, we ask you to share that with me as the representative for the recycling folks. So that's an issue that's under a second round of discussion by the board, but there's still a number of the issues that were expressed as concerns have not been resolved. So I just want to put that on your radar. I don't have a lot of detail on it at this point, but if you get a call, I appreciate you knowing about it. And we can address all the issues appropriately. So Joe also gave me the numbers, the uptick in the weight for the E-Center. We had seen the uptick in February, probably as a result of the easing of the winter weather, which seems kind of odd when you're looking outside. But for March, it continued upwards. The March numbers so far are 3119 pounds per day, which exceeds what the February average was. So the total weight through the middle of this month collected from the inception of the center is 356,498 pounds of recyclable material. And the weather, they were closed down for the weather on Tuesday and Wednesday, but this Saturday will be reopening. So a little bit of disruption to the collection schedule there, but continue to see good utilization of the center. So I think everything that the Planning Commission has dealt with has come before all of us, so there's nothing that I can add to that. Jim, your session on the autonomous vehicles was interesting. Roger Cohen is the guy that we met with when we met with the Secretary of Transportation last year.
I recognize, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have his card here, and he's going to provide us with some information. I don't even remember what it was. I didn't get it. I actually didn't follow up with him. The only other item was that we had, of course, the Economic Development Corporation board meetings this week, and Vince was there, I was there, Jim, you had something else, so we, I don't want to report out on everything, there's a lot happening there. I did snag a copy of the Executive Director's report. I'll just provide that to you, and any questions you have, you can follow up with me or directly with Jonathan Bowsworth. Sure. So that should cover it, so I'm done.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to report that we had executive sessions that were held on the following dates for 2018. That is March 12th at 2:30 p.m. regarding land purchase, March 13th at 10:30 a.m. regarding potential litigation, and March 13th at 11 a.m. regarding a building purchase. And I'd also like to request an executive session be held directly after this meeting regarding personnel issues. And moving on to other business, if I could have the indulgence of the commissioners, I'd just like to give a shout out to the CNRC staff. Yesterday they kept operations going, although we closed government for the snow day. Public safety and 911 certainly kept rolling, and of course the prison kept everybody inside. And I also noticed that we did have some personnel here at the courthouse. And I'd like to thank all those essential employees for continuing to happily do their duties during a snow day. Is there any other business to come forward?
Cat's out of the tree, right?
I believe the cat's out of the tree. I did not climb out of the tree, but I looked through your window and Jen's window, and best that I could tell.
What's it?
Covered up in all that snow.
No,
The kitty found safety, though, right?
the cat climbed down and went home. And that's the story I'm sticking with until somebody. Is there any other business to come forward with us today? Seeing none, I'll then ask that we adjourn. All right, thank you all very much.